Well, I promised you guys a video today that would explain what exactly I was doing in a Cineplex parking lot close to my house on Saturday night, having what I described to be my own personal tailgate party, which is actually a pretty apt description of what it is that I was doing there. Well, this video is about the current cultural trend that we've got called self-care. And what does it look like for Jesus to take and for us to surrender to him our self-care? See, our culture has, in some ways, in a good and a healthy way, developed this idea that, look, if you're going to be able to be present fully in the world, to endure some of the hard things that happen to us, to not get constantly burnt out or exhausted, if you're going to be able to serve others and even serve your community or the world around you, there is a sense in which you need to take care of yourself. Now, that can be taken in positive ways, but because as John Calvin would say, our hearts are idol factories, we are very, very good all the time at producing idolatrous and not so great ways of interacting with even things like looking after ourselves. And so we've got to be careful about what we mean when we use the phrase self-care. By that, do we mean what I think Jesus would mean by that and what he exemplified for us? That he regularly and consistently got up early in the morning, for example, before his friends and his disciples were up, and he would go away by himself, and he would make sure that he had quality, consistent time alone with God the Father in prayer and in fellowship and just spending time with him. There are times where Jesus, even with his disciples, after sending them out on a mission trip, for example, called them away with him by themselves to get some rest and to talk together and kind of recap a little bit of what had taken place. Well, that's a healthy kind of self-care, I think. But sometimes what we mean or come to mean by self-care is actually something more along the lines of, how can I just feed my idols even more than I already am, and kind of do it under the auspices of this banner of self-care? Well, on Saturday night, I'll tell you what happened to me. I just found myself exhausted, tired, both kind of physically. There's been a lot going on in this past month, a lot going on even just in terms of setting things up and admin things, and that actually wears me out in some ways even more than spending time with people can do. And so I felt a little bit drained, not at my best, not really able to fully and completely serve others the way that I wanted to because of just my energy levels. And at the same time, I felt myself emotionally kind of drained as well. And so, to be honest, I was in a place where I told my wife, I felt pretty depressed in that moment, at a low in a variety of senses. And because of that feeling drained and emotionally a lot going on as well, just things in ministry with people that I don't have 100% control over, I got into that place of not just being drained, but discouraged and beginning to take on more of a pessimistic worldview and even asking questions like, is what I'm doing even having any impact? Does it even matter? What is all this for? Maybe you've been in that headspace. But here's the thing, guys, is that in that moment, what is true self-care? See, I think what we often do is we immediately turn to our idols in that moment. The things that we think will truly give us rest for our souls and rejuvenation. Whether or not that's even actually true, it may just be that these are the things that we can escape to or can distract us from how it is that we're really actually feeling. And so I'll tell you, in that moment, when I was lying kind of face down on my couch, looking pretty miserable, what I wanted to do was go downstairs and play video games. What I wanted to do was go get in my car and go get a Baconator. What I wanted to do was to turn to things that could distract me, but could not heal me. And that is the difference. Now, I often do that. I do turn to those things. And you do too. But on Saturday night, by God's grace and His Spirit, I had the wisdom to pause while I lay face down on my couch and to begin to ask myself in humble consultation and prayer with God and with His Word and by His Spirit some questions. Some questions such as, what is actually at the root of how I'm feeling right now? I began to disentangle my emotions, to put labels to them, to say, I feel discouraged. Why do I feel discouraged? I feel depressed. Why do I feel depressed? I feel exhausted. Why do I feel exhausted? And as I sorted through those questions and began to answer them and answer what's at the root of these individual emotions, I began to form a picture of my actual reality instead of my perceived reality. And that reality was something to the effect of, you know what, I feel exhausted, quite honestly, because I have been doing a lot. But also I feel emotionally drained because there's things I don't have control over. And I don't feel like I'm going to feel any better until I gain control over them. So I'm just playing these scenarios and conversations over and over and over and over again in my mind, trying to control even future conversations that haven't happened yet by playing them over and over and over again so that I can figure out exactly what I need to say in that future conversation so that I can control the outcome of it. And in that moment, I repented and confessed that. And I prayed and trusted God again with the gospel, saying, Lord, the solution isn't for me to try and get control over this, even in my own mind. No, the solution is to believe that you are good, that you love me, and you died on the cross to take away my sins. You proved that you are completely in control. You've promised in your word that you will work all things together for the good of those who love you, who are called according to your purpose. And for that reason, Lord, I can trust you, that you are in control. I went through this process of praying and figuring these things out. And you know what happened after that? After that, I was able to actually see what I did need to do for self-care. It wasn't going downstairs and playing video games. It wasn't turning to Wendy's to be the savior of my emotions or my soul. It was, in this case, a night alone with God. A date night with my Lord and Savior. That is what I needed. And thankfully, my wife recognized that that's what I needed as well and gave me the freedom to go and do that. And she stayed here with our daughter. And so I got in the car and I did swing by Wendy's, but not for idolatrous reasons. I did pick up a Baconator. And I drove to the Cineplex parking lot a little bit early for the movie that I decided to go and see by myself. With God. And I turned up the radio and sat on the trunk of my car and had my Baconator and rocked out to music while in my sweatpants, pajama shirt, and flip-flops. And I am 90% sure that somebody driving by took a picture of me to put on their social media. And I am definitely sure that some people were laughing at me and wondering what on earth this guy was doing. And to that, I would just say, who cares? Some of you guys worry way too much, I would argue, about what people think about you in that respect. But that's what I needed that night. I spent a night out with my Savior. I went and watched the Blackberry movie. I didn't go see Guardians of the Galaxy because I knew my wife would kill me if I saw that without her. But I did go and see the Blackberry movie, which is actually quite interesting and a good movie. And I came back around midnight and got in bed and got ready to get up and preach at church the next morning. And you know what? That's what my soul needed on Saturday night. That was truly self-care. It wasn't self-seeking. It wasn't self-centered. It wasn't an escape. It was just recognizing I am exhausted, but I'm working through this stuff with the gospel, with Jesus. And now I'm actually free to go in and just enjoy this night out with my God. Now, maybe that is not your idea of what you would do in that moment. Maybe the idea of being in your sweatpants and flip-flops in a parking lot with people staring at you and taking pictures of you, maybe that's just not your idea of restful. But it was for me. My encouragement to you is to ask yourself in those moments, Jesus, what does it look like to give even my self-care to you? Because I'll tell you, my motivation on Saturday was not just for myself. It was so that I could be in a healthy place to get back to pouring myself out to serve others. What is true Jesus and others-centered self-care for you? What does it mean to get back to a place where you can love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, knowing that He will bring you home if you put your trust in Him? Thanks, friends.